Welcome to the Quilting Studio. My name is Lisa Rodgers, and today we're going to talk about our tension and how easy it is to get good tension on our Dream Quilter 15. Good tension starts in the bobbin. So we're going to talk about bobbins first and how to load our bobbins. The first bobbin that I've loaded, as you can see, is overloaded. The thread comes beyond the edges of our bobbin, and that will not rotate well. The second bobbin we're going to look at is a bobbin that has been wound incorrectly because it's wound crooked. So we wouldn't want that type of a bobbin. The third example that I have is a bobbin that is wound with very little tension on it, and it's mushy. And that won't help deliver good tension either. To get good tension on a bobbin, we use our tension winder or our tensioner on top of our machine, and we can adjust it there. However, when we wind a bobbin, we don't want it to be wound too tightly or the tension drawn too tightly because it stretches our thread and does not deliver a good thread. A nice wound bobbin, this is a bobbin here with all the features. It's not overwound, it's wound straight across, and it's firm but not stretched into the bobbin as it's wound. So the next thing we need to do to get good tension is we need to make sure that our bobbin case is prepared and ready. So let me go ahead, I'll remove that from the machine, and let's talk about our bobbin cases. They need to be clean. And I like to clean my bobbin case between every time I change my bobbin and take it out and put a new one in. I like to get in and take my brush and clean out any lint or stray threads that might have been caught in there. If you look here in the back of this bobbin case, there's a backlash spring, and it has a really important job. That backlash spring needs to be kept clean of lint and extra threads to do its job. We also have another spring on our bobbin case, and that's called the tension spring. It sits on the outside. It also needs to be kept clean. We don't clean this every time we change a bobbin, but if we should lose our tension for some reason we don't understand, maybe we just changed our bobbin and we put it back in and all of a sudden we've lost our tension, that would be a good time to look at this spring to see if any lint has got underneath it or a stray thread. Even though you can't see it, it might be there, and it'll lift this spring here and take the tension off your thread. So I like to take a 3x5 card, or you can see I've got a business card, and I like to take from the back and slide it underneath and clean it, and take it from the front and slide it underneath to clean out any excess threads or lint that might be hiding in there that you may not see. Now, the next thing we've got it cleaned, we've got our bobbin case, bobbins all wound correctly, is to load our bobbin. And when we load a bobbin, we want the bobbin to rotate clockwise inside of our bobbin case. So I like to hold the thread. If I hold my bobbin up, you can see it makes a number 9. And I put that in that position, put it in my hand, and load it into my bobbin. Then I bring my thread to the thread groove and underneath the tension spring. And you might hear that little click as it loads itself into the tension spring. Then to test our tension in our bobbin is very simple. We can lay it in our hand and pull it up. Now, let's look at a few bobbins here that I've preset, and let's see what they're doing. Lay it with the bobbin facing up, pull my thread, and that one is too tight, right? Way too tight. Let's look at the next one. Lay it with the bobbin facing up, pull your thread up, and oh, that one is way too loose. It's just kind of trying to go up forward. So let's go ahead and try this bobbin. And when I lay it and I pull my thread, up pops the bobbin in my hand and stands straight up. So we know that's good tension. Now, remember, when you set tension on a bobbin, there is a variance of tension that we can place on a bobbin it's not an exact spot. It's basically, there is a threshold in which that can be set. Now, we've solved half the problem because tension is two different components. It's the bobbin tension and the top tension of the machine. And now that we've set the bobbin tension, there's only one more part of the equation, the top. So we'll go ahead and talk about that. When adjusting a bobbin, it's very simple. We have 2 screws on our spring. It's the larger screw that we're going to go ahead and adjust. Place our screwdriver in and turn it lefty-loosey and righty-tighty lefty-loosey to loosen and righty-tighty to tighten. So if we needed to make an adjustment on that bobbin, it's very simple. Just very little tiny increments is what we want to move that screw. It's very sensitive to its tension. When inserting the bobbin, it's important to hold it between your fingers. And if you look, right at 3 o'clock, there is this little outpost in it, or outside, this little piece right here. Put that at 3 o'clock in your fingers, and then go ahead and put it into your machine. It'll line up with the bobbin area, and you should hear a nice heavy metal click. To remove the bobbin, you can go ahead and open up what I call the little door. And you can use that to open it, but don't use that to put it in. That's an incorrect. It can allow you to put it in incorrectly. So again, we want to take it between our fingers, and I like to line this area up at 3 o'clock and bring it underneath, lining it up with my machine and placing it. One more test that I like to do to check my bobbin to make sure there's no burrs or that it's not out of balance is I like to go ahead and thread my needle, rotate it, and bring my bobbin thread to the top. And as I do, I'm going to go ahead and pull this bobbin thread. And if it pulls nice and even and it's not jerking, that tells me that my bobbin and my bobbin case are presented and ready to go. If it should start to snag or pull back at me, then I might want to look at my bobbin to see if I might have some burrs in it and check that. Or check the way that my bobbin case is loaded to see that it's correctly loaded for a good tension. So now that we're talking about our top thread and the tension in the top, first thing we want to do is check our thread path and make sure that the thread comes through every disc and every eyelet correctly. It's important to remember that when you look at your thread coming through your tension discs, that the thread is pulled in between the tension discs, making good contact, and that it's not riding on the outside of those tension discs. It's also it's good to make sure that your tension discs are clean of any lint or excess threads. It's very important to keep them clean. Also, if we look at our machine, we look at this is the tensioner that we tighten or loosen to get good tension on our thread, our top thread. And it's the same concept, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. If I bring it towards me, it loosens my tension, or if I turn it away from me, it tightens my tension. And on this tensioner, it's not like our bobbin tension where it's just little tiny increments that we turn it. This one is not as sensitive. So we want to make sure that when we go ahead and tighten or loosen our tension, maybe I'll start with a full turn. And then as I get closer and closer to good tension, maybe a half a turn and then a quarter turn. But don't start with a quarter turn. Start with a full turn in turning that. I have some samples here that I've sewn out to show us good tension and tension with problems. So let's go ahead and review them and see what we find. The first sample that I have, if you look, the bobbin thread's blue, and it's actually coming through at its points, and you'll also see it coming through as what we call polka dots as each stitch is taken. That means that my top tension is too tight. It's pulling the bobbin tension or the bobbin thread to the top. So I need to loosen the top tension. But before we go on, let's look at the back of this, because we always need to look at the back and the fronts of our quilt. That tells us the whole story of tension. It looks pretty good on the back, actually. That's because the blue thread is all on the top. And so that's where the problem is. Let's go to our next sample. On this sample here, looking at the top, things look pretty good. You don't see any blue polka dots. We don't see them pulling through at our hard points or our hard stops. But let's turn it over and see what happened. There's the polka dots. The red thread now is coming to the back, meaning that my top tension is way too loose, and it's being pulled down to the bottom of my quilt. So my adjustment would be tightening the top. Now, we did talk about the thread path and how important it is at the thread path that you always keep an eye on that thread path. If it misses an eyelet or it doesn't go through the tension disc or a check spring, it's not loaded into our check spring properly, we really will see a dramatic difference in our tension. You can actually see here at the top that this thread is quite loose and I can pull it. There's really not a lot of tension on both threads. And if I turn it to the back of this, now you really see it. You can see that it's just lots of looping and railroad tracks is what we call them. So what happened here was I actually did not have my tension in the tensioner discs, and I didn't have it in the tension spring also. So I went ahead and rethreaded my machine. Now, about rethreading the machine, sometimes you'll get bad tension and you'll look at your thread path and it looks fine. But what I would suggest to you is that you go ahead and rethread it anyway. Sometimes we can't see a problem, but when we rethread the machine, it takes care of the problem that we can't see. Now on this sample here, if we look, there's not a lot of red or blue coming through. You might barely be able to see a little bit of blue coming and floating to the top. That's a good thing. And let's turn it over and see the back. Again, on the back, you may see a few little red polka dots on the back, kind of half and half. That's good tension. The thread actually floats to the top and to the bottom, and we want to distribute it evenly from the top and to the bottom. That's why it's important to look at both sides, to get the true look at what your tension's doing. Thanks for tuning in about tension on our Dream Quilter 15.